Hey, Hank, thanks for reaching out to me in your email over the weekend about your struggle with wishing that your wife would have a different evening routine. I actually hear emails from men quite frequently with almost the same exact story. Everyone's a little bit different in the details, but it seems to be a common thing among married men, and not newly married men, but men that have been married for a while, where they start to become deeply irritated by some things their women are doing. And so I wanted to talk about a little bit about this, share my own experience, and then talk about what I see going on here, but also how you might use the principles and the things we talk about in our community to understand what's going on, and also how to experience emotional freedom and release from these hard things. So a little bit about my story. I've been married almost 30 years, as you know. I have 6 children. And about 15 years or so ago, I think it's been, my wife, she would kind of just do her thing during the day. I was working, I'd come home, I'd be anxious to see her, and she would be busy about her life. The kids would go to bed. She would do other things. She'd tidy things up, do this, do that. She'd read. She'd collapse into bed exhausted. And I would find her asleep with her Kindle on her chest because she had fallen asleep. I'd take it off, I'd turn the light off, I'd put the Kindle on the nightstand. And I did so oftentimes with this deep sense of resentment and anger and hostility because I was finding her asleep in bed, and I just felt like last place. I felt like the last thing on earth she cared about was me. And I misunderstood so much of what was going on in her life as being about me. And like you, and you mentioned this in your email, I couldn't, it just puzzled me. I could not figure out how I could be of such low value to her that she could just ignore this idea of saying goodnight to me or even spending time with me and just keep going through this habitual pattern. What I didn't understand then that I understand now is I was just actually seeing all of that through the lens of my own insecurity, shame, anxiety, and fear. I thought that the interpretations I had of these moments were sincerely true because it felt true and it sounded like in my head that was the most reasonable explanation. But the way our brains work, all of that meaning interpretation is very unique to us. And the way we come up with those interpretations and meanings is by our brain examining the sum of our life experiences and saying, this looks like that. And if you've lived a life where you had things like a tremendous amount of insecurity, a tremendous amount of fear, anxiety, fear of abandonment, fear of loss, maybe feelings of loss, etc., it all starts to make sense. And what the brain is doing is looking at all your past experiences and saying, she's ignoring you, and she's ignoring you probably for a good reason because she doesn't find you valuable. And so we start to live in this imagination of our wife not thinking very highly of us, maybe not wanting to spend time with us. And all of this becomes really kind of debilitating because it ends up creating a little bit of a self-fulfillment kind of a scenario in the relationship. We feel like they don't value us, and so we start living in the emotion and the story that they don't value us. So we're mopey, we might get a little Eeyore-like, we might get melancholy and just kind of pout. And then to her, she's like, what is wrong with this guy? He seems kind of off, he seems cold, he seems a little hostile, a little upset, a little angry, a little resentful and melancholy. Ew, I don't want to be around that. I'm going to busy myself. And so she busies herself, and we see that, and we're like, see what I mean? She don't have time for me. And so you start living in this cyclical experience that becomes very much confirmation of all of your worst fears and anxieties. And all of that is happening because we're living in our insecurity, fear, shame, and anxiety. And so if you don't understand that this is going on, you will think that things are happening to you, and they're not. They're happening in you. Now, I would suggest, because of the work we do in our community, that you can use your emotions to kind of signal places where you have this kind of internal upset kind of nature that still needs to be sorted out. Our emotions are generally a dead giveaway of areas where we need to have some healing to kind of our past stories, where we need to experience wholeness in areas where we still feel quite insecure, where we still feel anxiety, where we still feel fear and uncertainty and shame. And so I want to walk you through kind of the process a little bit from mentoring men and from my work, and kind of go through what you can learn here in your scenario. So the first step, and we're going to use the acronym IDOLS, and the reason for that is because really what's going on here, Hank, is you have a dependency on things outside of you because of these hurt places that you carry within. You see, anywhere I have a hurt place, I have a place I don't actually experience love very deeply in my life. And so since I don't actually allow or accept love to permeate this part of me, I don't trust this part of me because I don't accept it. And so if I don't love or accept or trust part of my insides, I will think that anything that belongs to that part of me is not trustable. And so I'll need to create a dependency on someone else to answer or to provide those things. So if, for example, I don't feel like I have self-worth or value or appreciation, respect, if I don't believe I have significance, if I don't believe I have acceptance, all these things, I will externalize them and look for people to meet my needs to feel those things. That is a dependency. Now, idolatry is the practice of having an idol. And an idol is someone that we have an unnecessarily high view of. And when we have these low feelings of self and a high feeling of others, we have essentially made these people idols. And just like idols in maybe kind of a religion, we tend to have this scheme within where if we pay our idols homage, then we expect them to return to us what we are dependent upon them for. And this is a model that you can see through anthropology, through culture, all over the world. So we have this way that we have an idol, something that we believe can meet our needs, and if we pay it sacrifice and worship and gifts and pleasure and appeasement, it should keep giving us niceness, right? And so that's idolatry. And so this term idols here, this acronym, is just to help you remember this connection, that when you try to placate an external dependency or an idol, you will have hard emotions. I would suggest that the bulk of hard emotions you'll experience in your life are actually this very thing happening. And so we're going to use the word idols as an acronym to work through what to do about it. And the first one, I, in idol, is all about identify. And that is as simple as identify when you're having the hard emotion. What is the need, want, or desire that I have in this moment? There will always be a need, want, or desire in the story. And so when you're having a hard emotion like anger, resentment, frustration, disappointment, contempt, malice, you'll find if you just kind of let it spill out that you can identify a need, want, or desire. In your email, what I would say the first thing that comes out that we could use this identification process to identify is that you want acknowledgement. Now the second step in this, the D in idol, is to distill that. And we say distill it into a root need. And what we mean is that you don't need acknowledgement. That's just kind of an outer level need. And if we peel this apart like an onion, we'd find that underneath your need for acknowledgement, you want something else from acknowledgement. And so if we say something like, well, what would I get if I had acknowledgement? Or what would I feel if I had acknowledgement? We'll come to another level of need. In this one, it would be that based on your email, you'd get a sense from her saying goodnight and acknowledging you that she values you, Now we know this because your email actually explains that you can't fathom that she doesn't value doing this. And so you have kind of demonstrated, whether accidentally or not, that you have an association with your wife saying goodnight and giving you a kiss and showing you value. Okay, now what do you get from feeling valued? Now here's where I can't get this from your email because you've just told me really kind of the hurt. But in a coaching or mentoring session, what we would do is go deeper. Well, what do you get when you feel valued, right? So I can make some guesses because you use the word value here. And so I'm going to operate under an assumption that what you get is a sense of being valued. Now, here's the thing. She's just another human being. She's one of 8 billion or so human beings alive today and 105 billion people who've lived since time immemorial. So what is unique about her that she has this position of authority to grant you your sense of value? That's the first question to ask, right? And so this is where I want you then to observe. This is the O in idols. I want you to observe and own that you have created a dependency upon your partner for your sense of value. I'm going to guess that to some degree also, you've also given her some sense of your self-worth, your significance as a man, probably some things like acceptance. That's really common among men. And I want you to observe and own that you have given a lot of the ownership of defining those things in you from her. And that's why I've said in a dependency sense, you have made her an idol. She's the idol that gives you value. And she gives it to you in certain forms in your interpretation. A kiss goodnight, an acknowledgement, etc. Now, this might hurt a little bit. I realize to go through this. There's lots of questions that come up for men. We can't get them all here in this video, but I wanted to start you understanding this process. There's nothing unique in her. She's not the arbiter of value in the universe. And if she is going to give you value, I want you to ask yourself, well, where then does she get it? Because if you don't have it and your wife has it to give to you, she's getting it from somewhere. And so are there people in the world that have value that give it to the other people who don't have value? If so, but what are the conditions and rules for that? Let's just say she doesn't have value. She's got to get it from somewhere. So I want you to start mapping this out on a piece of paper. Okay, I get my value from her. She gets it from what? Her parents, her sisters, siblings, her employer. Where does she get it? And what you find is either everybody has no value and has to keep basically passing the buck, and there's somewhere some source of humans that have value that give it to all the rest of us, or the whole thing is bunk. Why do we believe that we don't have value in the first place? And this is what this step is intended to draw out. And this is step 4, the L in idols, which is look for the beliefs and the stories that you carry within that say to you, I don't have value. I don't have value and worth. I don't have appreciation. And so I need her to acknowledge those things by saying goodnight. Now, when you do that, you're going to start getting some eyeballs on beliefs. Now, I don't expect you could do this in the context of one video or even one mentoring session, right? This is why we created our 6-month Renewed Masculine Man program to help men with a lot of tools to help them to kind of flesh all this out and to identify specifically the stories they have, the self-limiting stories that see themselves as unqualified to meet this need. They're always rooted in shame. And I'm not talking about the emotion of shame, but the belief or the judgment of self that I am not qualified or I'm not enough for my own life. When we do not feel qualified or enough for our own life, we look outside of our life to fill up that deficit. That's neediness. That's insecurity. And we bring neediness and insecurity into a relationship, we will idolatrize. What's the word there? We will create an idol out of our significant other, and we will start asking them to provide for that deficit. And when this is happening bidirectionally, and it will, Now you have the case and the context for disillusionment in marriage. Disillusionment in marriage could be rightly said to be the season when each partner has made the other their idol and is disappointed with how well that idol is doing at meeting their deficient needs. And so to break out of the disillusionment stage, someone needs to let go of the idolatry. Someone needs to release the other partner from the role of being the provider of things that should be inside. I personally believe in Unmentary Men, we teach that the best candidate for this in the relationship is the man. And there's reasons for that. I won't unpack here. We don't think lowly of women. We just believe that there's a natural thing in men that they want to go first, even though they might not feel like it. Men kind of know this about themselves. They feel this is a noble act to go and do their own work, to basically slay the idols within so they can come back to the relationship having put those aside and now created a safe place where their partner can do likewise. And so that's step 4, is looking for these self-defeating stories, processing them by identifying the feebleness of them, right? And I just did that a little bit by asking you, well, where does value come from if it's in her and not in you? How does she get it? Where does she get it? You have to run these down so that in your own understanding, you see the futility of having to look outside yourself for your needs. And that's just a small part, right? We do that in a much broader detail in the Renewed Masculine Man. Now, the last step, the S in idols, is to shed that self-limiting belief. And to do that, you need to have a superior belief. You need to cultivate a better story to live in as a man, a mature adult man that says, I can get this inside. I've addressed the things, specifically the shame, the fear, the anxiety, and the insecurity. I've addressed the stories that I tell myself about that. I've addressed all these horrible beliefs about my value and worth. I've actually built new beliefs that are sound, they're secure, that don't depend on other people, that don't depend on me being perfect, and so forth and so forth and so forth. That is to shed these old limiting beliefs that create dependency and to take on new beliefs that are self-reliant. Now, again, I'm not talking about the kind of self-reliance that stores canned food and Band-Aids in the basement. We're not talking about self-reliance, which is like isolating and bunker mentality. I'm talking about the kind of self-reliance that looks inward for our basic needs, these needs of feeling acceptance, value, worth, significance, appreciation, right? I and lots of other men that you know are proof that this could be done, meaning these are not external needs. Otherwise, it should be impossible for anyone to do what I'm talking about. And as you know in our community, you know lots of men that have the capacity to go through life and look inside and feel secure and feel whole and not need another person to validate, approve, acknowledge, or accept that. And that is absolutely possible. That's what we help men with on a day-to-day basis. And that is that S step. Now, that was a really quick overview of what oftentimes is a 6-month process of going through something like the Renewed Masculine Man. But I hope it's given you some insight into what's going on in here. Is it really about your wife and her bedtime routines? Is it really about that she didn't say goodnight or didn't give you a kiss? Or is it really much deeper than that and about some hurt, some unresolved sense of uncertainty and insecurity within that doesn't know that you have value and worth if she doesn't say goodnight? And I think if you spend time there, I know if you spend time there, you bolster that part of you up. You practice a better way of thinking and believing about yourself, that you will emotionally feel better. You'll be able to see that she's doing what she's doing, Hank, because that's just the most natural thing for her to do. She's a mom, she's tired, she wants to veg at the end of the day when the kids go to bed. It's not about you, it's not about your value, it's not about your worth, it's just about unwinding. That's the most reasonable explanation for your average mom of children who's at home with the kids all day and they go to bed, right? But if you have insecurity, you'll take that personally. It'll hurt, and that hurt, I want you just to see, is showing you that you have a wound. And if we address that wound, the pain will go away. You'll be able to just appreciate who she is and how her bedtime routine is. You'll be approachable. You'll be open. You'll lose the hard emotions. You'll lose the melancholy, distraught response to that. And that actually makes you the kind of man that a woman would want to come up and say goodnight, right? Because if you're all those other things, she's going to say, I'm really tired. She's going to look over. She's going to see this cross face and say, I just don't have the energy for that right now. I'm going to bed. I hope that's given you some perspective. I hope that if you're watching this video and you're not Hank, it's helped you to understand what's possible in your life, the kind of work we do on Mentoring Men. We do very, very deep and significant work with men in this space. We help men to understand how to sort through some of their very, very, very complicated emotions. Our primary way of doing that is through something called the Renewed Masculine Man, which is a 6-month mentoring commitment that is very, very intense. And yet we also realize, you don't know us, we don't know you. And so that might be really kind of hard to fathom at the moment. And so here's some things I want to offer you instead if you're watching this video. The first is you can consider just booking a call with myself or one of our other mentors. There'll be a link below where you can do that. You could set up a free session between 60 to 90 minutes. We're not going to try to sell you anything. We're going to answer questions you have about your insides. We're going to talk to you about the hard emotions you're feeling. We're going to provide some reflection to you and help you see what these might be showing you about yourself. That's your first option. If you don't want to do that or you want to jump right into it, another option is to join the Mentoring Men community. We have within our community a lot of free courses. They don't require a time commitment. They're just study at your own pace. And one in particular that we have that you might be interested in, it could be done in just a few days, it's called the Emotionally Resilient Man. And in that course, we go through a bit deeper what I just explained to Hank in this video, but in a way that kind of goes a little bit deeper into how to work through some of these things, how it works. None of that course is going to just make you emotionally resilient, by the way. You still have to use those tools day in and day out for a period of time before they're effective, usually at least 9 weeks. And that might be a great way to get to know us a little bit more, to participate in our awesome worldwide global men's community with lots of really warm and connecting and open-hearted men around the world. That's also available below. And so you'll see a link below where you can set up a call, you can join the community and navigate the Emotionally Resilient Man course. And let's just leave you with that, okay? I hope you have found this helpful. I'd love to hear any comments you have. If it's too deep as far as to leave in a YouTube comment, you're also welcome to email me at Sven, S-V-E-N, at mentoring.men, and I will do my best to get your response. With that, I wish you a good night, and I'll talk to you in another video. Take care.